Hello and welcome to In the Cage, the UFC show brought to you by Sportology TV with myself, Ali Drew, and my co-host, Uni. And on today's episode, we are joined live from Fight Island by Adam Catterall. Adam, how is life treating you over in Abu Dhabi?
So good, man. So good. Every time I have a look at my social media feed, and this is not to wind anybody up, I do see various mayors and councillors of certain parts of our country talking about lockdown, tier 3, tier 2. Just been on the beach with pina colada, mate. You know what I mean? Things couldn't be much better right now.
Adam. So on Tuesday I was sat at home with a cup of tea. The rain was hitting my window. It was cold. I was getting prepared for United versus PSG. I was hoping United would do it, and we did it. And to be honest, it turned out to be a decent night. But how was your Tuesday out in Abu Dhabi? What did you get up to?
All right, mate. All right. Just played a bit of pool with one of the baddest men on the planet. Had a bit of a laugh with him.
I love that. I love it.
You lost the pool, though, should we just say? You did lose, didn't you?
Whoa, Ali. Just calm yourself down, right? I chose to lose the pool, right? When someone like Khabib is playing any type of game with you, you play by his rules. It's quite obvious he was cheating. Quite obvious. He's just doing what he wanted. I didn't correct him. Left him to it. And if he wants to claim the victory, he can have it, right? But I'll be back for a rematch.
Yeah, because you were 3-time Abu Dhabi champion at pool or something. I saw at the beginning.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Obviously you've been up close to him, you've been speaking to him. How does he seem? Obviously his father passed away in the sort of COVID time. How do you feel like his mood is? Is he sort of on form, do you think? I
think Media Week's one of those things that Khabib isn't the biggest fan of. Everybody that has followed his career knows full well that the fight week for him is concentrating on trying to get that weight down, because he's a big boy. He's not a guy that walks around at 155 pounds. He probably walks around at the best part of 185, 190. He's always in shape, but even so, to cut that amount of weight to get down to 155 by Friday is a big task, and it's a big mental strain. It's always been like that for him, always. So I think it was a bit of a stroke of genius from his point of view this week when he sees a request coming in from a mad Englishman to come and play pool for an afternoon or whatever. He kind of front-loaded his media week. A lot of other people kind of spread it out to keep themselves occupied, keep their minds going and what have you. But he front-loaded it. He came out of quarantine Tuesday morning. Obviously, there's a mandatory 2-day quarantine here in Abu Dhabi once you touch down. He came out Tuesday morning, and then he just went straight into all his media obligations. And I think we were second or third on his list, and he did some after that. But that's him then for the rest of the week, so he can lock himself away, concentrate on his weight cut. And as you rightfully point out, it's not been the greatest year for him. His father passed away a little earlier on this year, and anybody that has followed MMA knows full well the relationship that not only they have as obviously father and son, but as coach and fighter. And this is the first time that he will be competing without any influence from his dad. Anybody again that's followed his career, his dad had visa issues, so therefore for a lot of his UFC career, Khabib's dad's not been there. He's not been in the corner because he's not been able to get into America. Last year though, at UFC 242, which was here in Abu Dhabi. Sorry to wind you up, Ali. I was there at that as well. You know what I mean? Enjoying myself here. But that was the first time Khabib's dad had attended a UFC event, and it was unbelievable just to be around and watch a lot of people from the Middle East of Muslim heritage talking and just worshipping what had happened from Eagles MMA, that gym that Khabib's father had created, and how many fighters that have come out of Dagestan that have been influenced by him, that have gone on to do some wonderful things here in the UFC. So that was one of my big worries this week. How would that loss in his personal life affect all this? We're not going to fully find out until Saturday night, really. But being around him on Tuesday, there's an intensity that is still there that what I saw last year, in what I saw in the build-up to the Conor fight, in what I've seen on previous fight weeks. It's still there. He's a very focused individual. He's a very strong mentally guy. So yeah, my mind was put at rest on Tuesday. Once I've spoken to him and been around him, he's in. The champ's here. He's ready to rock and roll.
Adam, just tell us about his new team or his new trainer that he's got at the moment, and what sort of setup is, because, like you said, his dad was a pivotal part of his career and up till date. So yeah, who's the new guy? People don't know who the new guy is. That sort of dealing with his corner.
Well, he's always worked with American kickboxing. He's always worked out of the same gym as the likes of Daniel Cormier. Luke Rockhold, Cain Velasquez, those types of guys, known as the Three Kings back in the day down in San Jose. And obviously Khabib went over there to develop his MMA, because obviously his dad has taught him a specific wrestling style, which has made him ultra unbelievable in the octagon. But obviously you need to be a bit more of a rounded individual. So he's always worked out of there. And Javier Mendez has always been his main cornerman. So he's always worked with him. So nothing has changed from that point of view. But I suppose the main thing is that he's not been able to go over to America to train.
Yeah.
So what happened was that team came to Dubai. You know what I mean? There's the better places in the world, is there not, to be training in the lovely warm weather. So Khabib's been there for I think the last 2 months, or maybe just shy of the last 2 months with that team. All these guys from Eagles MMA in Dagestan have come down, his training partners and what have you. And Javier Mendez, his main coach, it's always been his main coach, has cracked on. So that's why I'm not overly concerned with the actual fight element of it, because nothing's really changed in the camp. Everything's kind of similar. It's just obviously the loss of something as massive as your dad in your personal life will have some type of effect on a human being. But as of now, I've not seen any chinks in the armour.
You've also been around and spoke to Justin Gaethje. Do you think that he can cause an upset? Do you think that in the way he is, do you see he's looking confident?
He is. When you get a big fight week, and I've only really properly experienced it once with Khabib, obviously last year in Abu Dhabi with Dustin Poirier, a lot of times with Conor. Whenever it's a Conor fight week, anybody that's in the opposing corner against Conor can kind of get caught up in the bright lights of the fight week. They can kind of get sucked in because there's so many fans around going Conor crazy. The media's all over it, and the media are asking them questions purely about Conor because it's the Conor show. And you kind of get lost in it and then drowned in the headlights a little bit. So even before you've made the octagon walk, you're like, I'm just a bit part player in this story, you know? And last year, there were signs of that in the build-up to an Khabib fight. Khabib is a monster superstar, like crazy big. You kind of forget a little bit because he obviously bases himself out in Dagestan and in Russia. Here in the Middle East, he is the man. There's nobody else in MMA. It's Khabib time, you know? So that's what this show's all about. And when this relationship with the UFC kind of kicked back off again last year, it was because of Khabib. Khabib was the person that they were using as the poster boy. So anybody that was going to fight him in Abu Dhabi was always going to kind of be the away fighter. Justin Gaethje, I don't know whether it's because there's no fans around. We're in this crazy bubble where only UFC people are around it. You know, there isn't the razzmatazz of a normal big fight week around. But speaking to him on Tuesday, he's super focused, super lasered in. The performance that he put in earlier on this year against Tony Ferguson kind of says that he's at the level, he can perform at the level. And from the mental side of it, which I think is the most important when you're coming into a fight like this, again, I'm so confident that this weekend he's going to deliver a brilliant fight. Not a guy that's just going to freeze. He might get beat because we're talking about Khabib, but this is not a guy that's going to freeze. There's no quitting him, and it's going to be super entertaining.
Did you expect that from Gaethje when he fought Ferguson? Because we know that Ferguson was on this unbeaten streak, and he was just this. There was always going to be this path of Khabib and Ferguson. It was going, and it got disrupted a few times, and everyone was expecting him to beat Justin, and then Justin pulled out that performance on that night. Did you expect that performance from Gaethje?
Performance? No. I mean, I'm not surprised that he's had his hand raised at the end of it because he's a super talented lad. But to dominate Tony Ferguson in the way that he did on May the 9th, and bear in mind, he took that on kind of last minute because the original fight was booked for April 18th. Yeah, and then the pandemic kind of knocked it back an extra couple of days. He took the first one on, I think, 8 or 9 days notice. He said, yeah, I'm in, I'll do it. And he never takes last minute fights. So then to fast forward, 2-3 weeks later to May the 9th when they ended up getting it on, for him to put in a performance like that against someone who, like Tony Ferguson, who's been dominant, I think he was on a 13-fight streak at the time, you know, unbelievably dominant force in this division. For him to win them in the manner that he won, that's the surprise. Not the fact that he won, the manner that he won. Since he suffered them losses, those back-to-back losses, Justin Gaethje, one of which to Dustin Poirier, he's changed his game. He's not as reckless. He's a lot more calculated. He's thinking a lot more about his stuff. And his striking game's improved in the aspect that he's not just wild and throwing tons and tons of stuff and hoping something lands. He's waiting, he's patient, he's thinking. And the things that he's throwing, is the shots that he's landing percentage-wise are actually landing at a higher percentage rate, you know. So Manner of victory, yeah, massive surprise. Him winning, no, I wasn't surprised at all.
You know, I saw you a few weeks ago, and my question at that time was, how do you see the fight playing out? You said to me, let me get to fight week. Let me look at both fighters in the eye, and I'll tell you on fight week. So here we are. It's fight week in Ireland. Tell me what's going to happen.
Out of everybody that Khabib has faced, and I even include Conor in this, because Conor coming into that fight wasn't proper Conor McGregor. This is Conor McGregor that had been on the lash for 2 years, you know what I mean, and just came in and thought that he could rock and roll. Out of everybody that Khabib has fought, this is most certainly the toughest test. This is most certainly going to ask him the most amount of questions. I'm still siding with Khabib though. Khabib will win this fight. I think it's going to go the whole way because Gaethje's tough. He's got a hell of a chin on him. There's no quitting him whatsoever. He's a very, very good wrestler. So I don't think he's going to be falling into traps where he's giving up his back and getting himself strangled. So I would say that Khabib would win on points. But there will be a point in the fight where Justin Gaethje's having success and he's rolling the dice and you're on the edge of your seat thinking to yourself, is he going to be able to pull this off? But I would side from being across both guys, now being satisfied where Khabib's head's at, seeing his brothers and his team and everything kind of fight week being normal around him, bar obviously his father, who normally isn't here anyway, but obviously in his personal life, he would have been speaking to him on the phone and obviously Skype and Zoom and various things like that. I would side with Khabib. So I'm going to go Khabib points over 25 minutes.
Cool. You know, with these big UFC nights, there's always a good co-main.
You'll lose it.
with the big UFC nights, there's always a good co-main. Most of the time there is, but this time there's a big co-main. Robert Whittaker, former champion in the middleweight division, fighting a strange fight. Somebody who's, you know, sort of was a heavyweight when a couple of years ago, and then he sort of come down to middleweight, and he's destroying people the last couple of years. I know he fought Dominic Reyes in 2018, but since then he's obviously moved down and done what he needed to do in Jared Cannonier. Talk to me about that one. That's a good fight, that fight. You spoke to both men this week.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that fight.
The interesting narrative about this fight, right, is that if you look at the champion in Israel Adesanya, he is doing something quite bizarre. No other champions do this. He calls out his next fight. It's weird. Normally, it's the challenger going, right, I'm ready for the champ. Bring on the champ. I've done whatever I need to do. But if you look at what Izzy's done, he's smashing everybody in the division, and then he's going, this guy's going to be next. I like what this guy's doing. I'm going to smash him up next. And everybody's like, what are you doing? He's not ranked number 3 or number 4. Hence, taking on someone like a Yoel Romero back in the day. So Izzy's already called out Jared Cannonier. He's already come out. He said, listen, if Jared Cannonier smashes Robert Whittaker, I want him next to the title. So that has kind of put this narrative on this fight of being an eliminator, you know, because Whittaker is the former champion, of course. Izzy will probably say, well, I've already dealt with Whittaker. I don't need to fight him again. But the bosses of the UFC, if Whittaker comes through and wins this weekend, they'll go, listen, man, you smashed all the records in New Zealand and Australia last time you fought, as if we're not going to do it again. You know what I mean? We can do a crowd in New Zealand now with everything that's going on, the way that they've handled the pandemic, and pay-per-view numbers will go through the roof. So it is, for me, the eliminator for the middleweight title this weekend. You're right to point out the weight thing with Jared, because he started off at heavyweight, came down to light heavyweight, now he's fighting at middleweight, and he is shredded. Sat next to him the other day, I was like going, I ain't taking my top off next to you on the beach, son. I'll wait. Yeah? I'll wait for you to move on a little bit. He looks in mint condition, but more so mentally. What an impressive guy. That's the first time I've had a conversation with him. Very, very impressive human being, the way that he views martial arts, the way that he's viewing his own personal journey. The reason for the weight thing is that he had a job. He was doing a normal 9-to-5 job and he couldn't train full time. So he was just cracking on with normal life, gets himself into the UFC as a heavyweight, then all of a sudden manages to lighten the load of the 9-to-5 because he's getting a bit better money in the UFC. So he's like going, all right, I'll go part-time. Then he moves into light heavyweight. Now he's a full-time athlete. That's what he does now. So that's why there's a massive weight cut and why he's down at middleweight and he's undefeated at middleweight. He starched everybody and now he's taking on Robert Whittaker. But the best thing about Whittaker that I've picked up this week is, if you remember last year, there were lots of questions over him after the Israel Adesanya defeat, because he came out publicly and said, listen, I'm burnt out mentally. I need to take a break from the UFC. And he did. He changed his whole regime. This is a guy that used to train on like Christmas Day. He's got young family, young kids and stuff like that. He's running up sand dunes in Australia and all that. So he's cut his work patterns down from 7 days to 5 days. And he's such a more happier dude. He's just in a miles better place. We saw him against Darren Till on Fight Island, a very mentally taxing fight, which he came through. Talking this week, he's back to his old self. He feels like his old self. He's a supreme athlete. And again, you're right in pointing it out. The two cherries on top of this cake are the main and the co-main. Both of them are absolutely stellar fights.
You know what? Just talking about.
What's your prediction before you move on? What's your prediction for that?
Don't do that, Ali. What are you doing? You've already got one out of me.
I saw you bringing them both up.
Normally I'd always go Robert Whittaker, always. Cannonier's just been going through everybody like a dose of salts. But what I will say, and this is a key fact for me saying this now, right? This fight's a 3-round fight with it being a co-main. It's not a 5-round fight. So therefore, Robert Whittaker, who's been a guy that's been used to fighting 25-minute fights, he's been used to doing the marathon side of this sport, now gets an opportunity to sprint. And because he's so technically sound, I think if he can start really fast in that first round, Cannonier's then playing catch-up. And he's going to have to force things within the fight that he might not necessarily want to have done. And then Whittaker is brilliant at counter striking. He's brilliant on the back foot. He'll just pop you off all day long. So purely because this is a 15-minute fight, I'm going to stick with my original thought and go Robert Whittaker again, either late finish or via points.
Cool. Actually, just before I
You got that out of me then.
Hey.
You got that out of me. It's a good job I've already done these interviews, because if anybody saw this, they'd be like, well, hang on a minute. You were saying that you're going to beat me up.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, actually, you were talking about Darren Till there, and that's somebody I just wanted to quickly pick your brain on. Somebody that you guys know quite well. I think Nick knows him quite well as well from your channel Fight Disciples and your podcast. Well, what's next for him? Because we know that he fought Robert Whittaker last time in Fight Island. He lost, and it was quite a big loss, to be honest. I don't know. People had it quite wide. I had it quite wide as well, personally. But what do you see for Darren Till? Because even then, Izzy Adesanya was saying, "Listen, I'd like to fight him at some point." It's just that he might lose, but people still want to fight him. What's the next sort of step for him?
Well, fight sports comes right with two. There's two parts to fight sports. What you do, obviously, whether it's boxing or MMA, what you're doing in the ring and the octagon is obviously paramount. You've got to be performing. You've got to be doing that. But also what you're doing on the microphone is important, because you've got to resonate with fans. Fans have got to be bothered about wanting to see you, whether that's wanting to see you win or wanting to see you lose. Doesn't really matter, as long as they want to see you, because this is a numbers game at the end of the day, isn't it? You know, the business boys at the UFC, if they think a Darren Till fight will sell, they'll put a Darren Till fight on. That's what they'll do. Now, Darren Till, we keep forgetting how old he is. He's still only a young fella, you know. But look at the levels that he's performing at for such a young guy, against guys that have been here for a lot longer period than him. And Robert Whittaker, as I said, is an elite level fighter, and he got outfoxed that night. Only just, but he got outfoxed. Darren Till's going to fight Jack Hermansson in December, and again, it's a massive, massive, massive fight in the narrative of the middleweight division. If he can get a win against Jack Hermansson, and don't get me wrong, that's another tough fight. Very two different styles in that, because Hermansson's a grappler compared to Till being a striker. But if he can come through that, if he can get a victory against someone like that, then all of a sudden he's straight back in the mix. He's straight back in that conversation with the guys that are fighting this weekend, the Whittakers and the Cannoniers, and obviously Israel Adesanya. As I mentioned a moment or two ago, Adesanya's calling the shots, man. Nobody else is calling the shots in this division. If Adesanya wants to fight you, you're going to get the fight with Adesanya, because he is the superstar of the UFC right now. So what he says goes. So if he likes what you're doing, if he thinks he can make some coin off you, don't be surprised if Darren Till beats Jack Hermansson and he's fighting for the world title next year.
Actually, you know what? Darren Till's an absolute savage on social media.
Stay out of the way. Don't annoy him. I mean, I know him. I'm his mate, and he gives it to me every day.
I like that. I love his account. I love his Twitter. He's absolutely Twitter and Instagram. He's crazy, man.
Yeah.
But
I feel sorry for his missus. He's brutal to her as well, non-stop.
Yeah, you just won't switch off, would you? You know what I mean? But having said that, though, she has got him back a couple of times on her own personal account. She's been posting like people knocking him out and stuff. So you know what I mean? Potato.
Adam, you know, it's been a pleasure. I know you're a busy man, and you're probably
What's that? Yeah, 5 Coronas. So just keep them beers coming. Keep them coming. I'll be back with you in a minute.
Not fair.
Listen, with all the hard work comes good play, man. So go and enjoy yourself. Do what you need to do. And thank you very much for joining us.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having me. Enjoy your weekend.
Adam. Enjoy your weekend.
Guys, that was Adam Catterall living the life in the sun in Abu Dhabi on Fight Island before UFC 254. What a life. What a life.
Unbelievable.
But Adam, thank you very much for joining us. It's always good to get Adam's perspective on a big fight or any fight in the MMA world and the boxing world. But next up, we've got someone else who is out on Fight Island, one of the main MMA and boxing correspondent for The Insider, who's out on Fight Island. I spoke to him yesterday in regards to the sort of the things that's going on Fight Island. He was there for the last Fight Island fights as well. And he just told me about the differences. He spoke to the fighters as well. So we went through a few things there as well. So definitely give that a watch as well. Guys, welcome to In the Cage, the MMA sports show, talking about everything to do with the UFC. And this week, we've got one of the biggest events of the year, UFC 254, out in Abu Dhabi. And I've got to introduce you to a guy that I've known for a long time in the combat sport world, known him through the boxing scene. He's there in Fight Island at the moment, none other than the boxing and MMA correspondent for The Insider, Dawson. Alan, how you doing, my friend? It's been a little while since I've seen you face to face. So
yeah, face to face.
Best impression again at the moment, to be honest.
Pandemic got in the way, but yeah, it was always good seeing you on the scene. We usually saw each other at boxing events, and from there started incorporating MMA into Insider, and now going out on the road a lot. So it's pretty good to do this in the middle of a pandemic still, and it does feel like there's few places safer. I certainly feel safer from the coronavirus here than I do in London, because you just get tested every other day, like everyone here does. Yeah. So I was tested on Monday. I was tested today. Came back yesterday, so I was negative. I think I've had 7 or 8 tests in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then when I was here in July, I think I had like 10 tests or something.
Just talking about, obviously, I've known that you were there for what in July. What fight was it that you were there for? Actually, was it the?
Yeah, the first they kicked it off with the pay-per-view for the first week.
Yeah.
And the headliner there was Kamaru Usman, who's the welterweight champion, against Jorge Masvidal, he's seen as like the BMF, the baddest mother effer in the game. So he came in at late notice, and it was. I think the expectancy was the actual fight was going to deliver a lot more, but Usman kind of asserted his game a lot more than Masvidal was able to. But Masvidal only had like a few weeks preparation. And then there was another event on the Wednesday, and I think that was the one that was headlined by Dan Ige and Calvin Kattar, and that was awesome. That was cool. That was like, if you like boxing, you'll like stuff like that, because it was a really good striking. But Calvin Kattar is one of the best strikers in the whole of the UFC. And that was just like a bloody, messy. Well, it wasn't too messy, but it was just like, cuts and swollen faces and all that sort of stuff. And then there was another event on the Saturday, and then another one the Saturday after, and that was headlined by Darren Till and Robert Whittaker.
Oh, you were there for some good fights, man. So talk to me about Fight Island. A very selected number of you guys are out there at the moment. We've also got Adam Catterall, who will be joining us at some point. I'll be talking to him at some point regarding Fight Island. I know I've been watching his stuff on BT Sport that he's been doing. But just talk to me about Fight Island. What's the situation like out there? I know you've been out there for the first time around and this time around. What's the difference?
The first time around, same as this time. You have to post 2 negative tests to be able to fly here, like with the legal government stuff. And then when you land, you get a police escort to the bubble to make sure that there's no contagion there. And then you have to quarantine here and post another 2 negative tests. And then you get like a wristband.
Okay.
And that's like a passport that means you can go out in the bubble. The bubble's, I don't know what 10,000 square foot it is, but there's a beach just over that way in front of me. There's a hotel here. There's another hotel there. There's an athlete hotel just behind me, and a Grand Prix track, which is all in the bubble. And then the Flash Forum, which is this purpose-built, really small arena. And then there's connecting media tents and athlete tents to that is just behind there as well. Yeah, so there's a police escort that chaperones any person who's coming into the bubble to the bubble. And in July, it was just, you know what fight weeks are like in London, because we live there. It's a bit weird because, well, not weird, but it's you know, you go to the event, you do your stuff, and then you kind of go back to your house.
Yeah.
Whereas like in a Vegas fight week, you know, there's more going on that you go to. You feel like there's, you know, more happening and more events, and it feels like, you know, a much bigger fight city anyway. But the Fight Island experience is definitely like another level to that, because you're living on top of cutsmen and referees, and you just see Herb Dean and have breakfast near Herb Dean or Mark Goddard. So that's, for me, that's quite cool. You know, I always felt like in July, I do my, you know, you do long hours, but you make sure you get, you know, time off to do a bit of like, you know, mental health regeneration and whatever. And every time I went down the beach, I'd always see Dagestanis wrestling and grappling each other on the sand. And you wouldn't really see that in Vegas, obviously, because there's not a beach, but you wouldn't see that sort of preparation leading up to the Saturday. I knew, because I went to there was a golf course in the bubble, but they've moved the boundaries. You can't play at the Yas Links course, but I know the UFC executives were there at the crack of dawn in July, playing at 6 a.m, 7 a.m. Apparently, Lawrence Epstein, who's the chief operating officer, is the best golfer. So they were playing golf most mornings. The cutsmen and the referees, they were always having like pool parties in the middle of the day, because they were working obviously in the evenings. So they were always listening to Motown and just, you know, chilling with their tattoos out and stuff like that. And in the evenings,
are you guys there for work, or are you guys there for fun? Because that sounds like a good old holiday to me. You know what I mean? Alan, let's talk about why we're there, or why you're there, sorry, and why I'm talking to you today. This weekend, we've got this mammoth event, UFC 254, Khabib versus Justin Gaethje. We know, leading up to this fight, the whole sort of talk, maybe at the start of the year, was Khabib and Tony Ferguson. The pandemic came, disrupted that once again, and then disrupted the fight altogether. I think Justin just sort of ruined and spoiled the party there, and he did it quite convincingly. I don't really want to touch too much on the fight, but I do want to touch on Justin Gaethje and, you know, what sort of force he is, because people sort of wrote him off when the Tony Ferguson fight came on. And it might have just been more emotion than anything, because I think people wanted to see that Ferguson-Khabib fight. It had been building for the last couple of years. But then Gaethje just came out and just in emphatic fashion just dealt with Tony Ferguson. Talk to me about Justin Gaethje. You have a lot more knowledge on his history and what he's done and what he's come from, and to where he is now. So just talk to me a little bit about him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that Ferguson win, it wasn't just that he bludgeoned him and just dominated him. Really, it was the performance of the year in all combat sports so far. But it was the fact that he took that fight on short notice as well, in the middle of a pandemic. And I can't remember, like, when in May, I remember feeling still quite apprehensive about coronavirus and not really knowing. I still had like the fear of the unknown and things. I don't know if you had the same.
Yeah.
So I was still I hadn't really ventured outside of, you know, my hometown in London, really, let alone getting on a train or anything. But he, you know, got on a flight to Jacksonville and beat the absolute shit out of someone. So to do that in those circumstances as well, I just think it elevates the performance even more. And to do it against Ferguson, who hadn't lost in 8 years, he was on a 12-fight winning streak.
Yeah,
he's stolen all that. Well, not stolen, but he's taken all that momentum into this fight, and I think it makes this fight even bigger. With Gaethje this time for this fight, it's I don't know. It's seeing him at the beach today. We had a press conference just a few hours ago. And he's brought his parents here. I don't think they normally come to his fights, but they've certainly never left America before. But he's flown them, you know, business class, and so I feel like this is like a life-changing, moment for him. And whether he can, get the win is another story. But Khabib's has gone through some things. He's had a loss. His father and trainer, Abdulmanap, died after coronavirus complications, and I think there was a heart issue as well, but I'm not sure if one led to the other. so this will be the first fight for him without his father, and his father could come here. He could never go to America because of being denied a visa, but he came here for UFC 242 when Magomedov beat Poirier, and if he hadn't, he would have been here otherwise. So Magomedov's corner is quite different than what it would normally look. But Gaethje's, he's like a weirdo, but in a good way, because he's got this collegiate wrestling background that he doesn't really use that much. Yeah, he's got like 24 matches and 2 losses, and 18 of his wins have just been by knockout. And he's not like a textbook striker. He won't hit you with a 1-2 like a jab, orthodox right hand. His will just be like wailing over the top, and it will just be non-stop, and you won't. It's harder to defend that in a way, like Marcos Maidana against Floyd Mayweather or something. You don't really know. I think you can only really defend against it when you're experiencing it or at the time. But yeah, so he's definitely going to cause Khabib new things to think about, not necessarily problems. It depends how he adjusts on the night.
But what's the rest of the plans for the rest of the week? We're recording this on, what day is it today? I don't know. The day is Wednesday. So you've got Thursday, Friday, and Saturday fight. Now, what's the rest of the week looking like for you?
Tomorrow there's there's another media day, but this is more, I think, like Dan Cormier is going to be there. I think it's going to be people like that who are, like, for people who don't know, he's a former 2-weight UFC champion.
Well, DC, man. DC's a legend.
Yeah, one of the men at light heavyweight, one of the men at heavyweight, and now he's like a UFC commentator. But yeah, lovely guy, and I don't know how you can not like him. He's cool and fun, and he's he'll be there. He's also a training partner of Khabib's at AKA American Kickboxing Academy in San Jose. So he's like a good mate of Khabib's as well, providing insight there. So we'll be speaking to him and a few other people at this other media day. Friday is it's the weigh-in. So for like the first half of that, there'll be a lot of moody athletes who are thirsty, tired, and wanting to make weight, and then there'll be the face-offs. One of the main differences about this card is that it's going to be broadcast at the more socially acceptable time for people in the UK.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think I can't remember what time it starts for the UK. It'll probably be like 6, and then the main cut, and then maybe Khabib's fight is at 10.
Yeah, so, yeah. I think I read something. I think I read about 7 o'clock, something like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
So it'll be a bit earlier if you're watching in America, but that's an advantage for people competing here. The time difference, I think, has definitely been a talking point amongst athletes. If they came in from Vegas, it's a 16 or 17-hour flight, or if you came in from like the West Coast. So not only did you have to deal with that, it's also an 11-hour time difference. So I think they slept during the day and they got up at night, and had their, this would be their morning or their lunchtime. So that definitely messed with, I think that messed with some performances, and some people thought sluggish. So we won't have that issue. Okay. We won't have that issue this weekend.
Interesting. And that was actually a good point, actually. I didn't actually think of that, but I did read it, and I am obviously going to watch it. So it's going to be it's without a doubt, UFC. One thing the UFC has done during the pandemic is produce high-level quality shows. We know that in boxing, it's not been the same. Just this weekend gone in boxing, we finally got a fight between the 1 and 2 in Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez. But generally, in boxing, we've had to wait a long time for a fight of that magnitude to come. We know towards the end of the year, we're probably going to get a lot more fights coming in. We've got quite a good card in regards to the boxing scene. But one thing UFC has done well, producing just great cards week after week after week. And you're a lucky man. That's all I'm going to say. You get to do your work. I look at your social media. I look at your Twitter. You're on the beach. Not on the beach. You're near the poolside. Supposedly with your laptop doing work. But yeah, good stuff, man. Look, it's been a pleasure catching up with you, Alan.
I appreciate it.
I know you work hard, so as much as I have a laugh with you, we know how much hard work goes into fight week as well. So thank you very much for coming on. Thank you very much for giving us an insight on Fight Island. We'll also be having Adam Catterall on, who'll be talking about the main event, his sort of interview with the guys. But yeah, Alan, top man, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Cheers, my man. Hopefully, hope to bump into you on the road in a few events in December or something we've got coming up.
Yeah,
Tyson Fury and Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois. They should all be. I mean, that's a good match straight right there. 2 heavyweights and Tyson Fury in a homecoming of sorts.
Yeah. No, hopefully, if you're back, well, you should be back by then, and I should hopefully be covering the fight. So, should be good. Tom, man, Alan, Dawson, on the inside there. Speak to you soon, brother.
Great to be joined there by Adam and Alan and hear those views right from Fight Island. Very, very jealous and looking forward to seeing the fights this weekend. Make sure you stay tuned. We have lots more coming up. Make sure you're subscribed and leave some comments for us so we know your opinions, and we will see you next time.